My son moved me to a care home for my safety, then rented out my house without telling me. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because the tulips were just starting to bloom. I was trimming the garden hedge like I always did when I stepped back onto a patch of damp soil and lost my balance. The ground came up fast. I landed sideways, hard, and the sharp crack in my wrist made the world go white for a second. It wasn't dramatic. No neighbors came running, no ambulance. Just me, on the cold earth, clutching my arm and trying to breathe through the pain. By the time I wrapped my wrist in an old kitchen towel and made myself some tea, the doorbell rang. Daniel. My son, 38, all-pressed shirt and perfect stubble, breezing. In with a laptop bag slung over one shoulder and 2 cups of coffee in hand like he lived there. He hadn't called. He rarely does these days. "Mom," he said, eyes scanning the room like it was the first time he'd seen it. "Why didn't you tell me?" I blinked. "Tell you what?" He gently took my hand, saw the swelling. His face tightened. "You fell." I didn't ask how he knew. Maybe the neighbor told him. Maybe the universe whispered. It didn't matter. He was already taking over. 20 minutes later, he was sitting across from me at the kitchen table, talking fast, persuasive, like a salesman with only one product: control. "There's this place, Rosehaven Wellness and Recovery. Clean, safe, medically staffed, with a great reputation. They even do massage therapy and yoga." I raised an eyebrow. "It's just for a few weeks, Mom," he added quickly. "While your wrist heals. While I fix up the house a bit, update the locks, maybe declutter." "Declutter?" He smiled. "You know, simplify things. Make it easier for you to move around." "I move around just fine," I said. My voice came out sharper than I meant. He flinched, then softened his tone. "Mom, this place isn't safe anymore. The stairs, the old carpets. You live alone. What if next time you hit your head?" He leaned closer. "I just want to keep you safe." That line, he used it when I had pneumonia. When he took away the car keys. When he canceled my credit card and moved all my accounts to an app I didn't understand. I stared at the chipped rim of my teacup and said nothing. Then I nodded. Just like that. He helped me pack 1 suitcase. A few outfits, my toothbrush, a pair of slippers. I reached for my sketchbooks, but he stopped me. "I'll bring them next time," he said. "You don't need to carry all that." I left the house quietly, like someone being escorted out of their own memory. He didn't look back. I did. Rosehaven was spotless. Too spotless. The sheets smelled like lavender. The nurses smiled like they were being watched. The food came in on pastel trays, labeled with my name, my table number, and my sodium allowance. Everything was calm, clean. Quiet, too quiet. I was assigned a wellness coordinator named Karen, who seemed to appear every time I sat alone for more than 10 minutes. "You should join our watercolor group, Iris," she'd chirp. "I'm not much of a group person," I'd say. "We encourage participation," she'd reply, always with that sugary edge that didn't invite refusal. By day 3, they gave me a printed schedule. 7:30 a.m., stretch and breath, 9 breakfast, 10:30 group walk, 12-hour lunch, 2-hour art therapy. 4:30 music hour, 6-bar dinner, 9-hour TV off. I asked for my phone. "Screen time increases stress in older adults," Karen said sweetly. I asked again the next day. This time she frowned. "Daniel said you'd be better off without it." He was very clear. "Daniel." He texted me short, polite updates from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey, Mom. Hope you're settling in okay. Rosehaven, one of the best. Just handling a few things with the house. We'll bring your art stuff soon. Love you." "Rest well," I called. Him from the front desk once. Left a voicemail. No response. By the 5th night, I started to feel like I wasn't recovering. I was being contained. That's when she appeared. "Iris?" I looked up from my untouched tray. Therese, my old colleague from St. John's. She was still in scrubs, her name tag flipped backward. You look like you're one seminar away from joining a cult, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. I almost laughed. Almost. What are you doing here? I asked. Filling in for a night shift. Didn't know you were a guest star. I'm recovering, I said flatly. She studied me. Need a favor? I didn't answer. But she reached into her pocket anyway, pulled out a small tablet, slid it across the table like contraband. You've got 10 minutes. Don't log into anything personal. You didn't get this from me. She stood, nodded once, and walked away. I stared at the screen, then I tapped it on. First, I checked the weather, just to see if it worked. Then I opened Google Maps, typed in my address. But something was wrong. My home didn't come up as a residence. It was marked unavailable. No navigation, no contact number, no street view. My heart started pounding. Switched browsers, searched again, and there it was. Artist's cottage, curated charm in the heart of the city. My house. Photos slid by, high-res, professionally staged. The garden had been trimmed and filled with white tulips. My kitchen now boasted rustic finishes. The guest room had been turned into a yoga space, but it was the bedroom that made my stomach turn. They had moved everything. Stripped the sheets, boxed the books, removed the antique lamp from my husband's side of the bed, and on the wall above the headboard, centered, framed in brushed gold, was one of my sketches, a private one. A drawing I had done late one night, years ago, of my husband asleep at the piano. I never showed it to anyone. The signature had been cropped, but I knew every line, every stroke. Daniel didn't just rent my home, he'd rented out my life. Therese didn't ask questions when I slid into her passenger seat that Sunday afternoon. She just handed me a hoodie, sunglasses, and a half-warm thermos of chamomile tea. We didn't speak for most of the drive, but when she turned onto my street, I could feel my chest tighten like it was bracing for impact. My house sat under the late afternoon light like a memory I hadn't been invited to remember. The garden looked too neat, the lawn trimmed to a precision I never had the patience for. Fresh white curtains floated behind the living room windows. I leaned forward. "Slow down," I said. My voice barely came out. Therese pulled over half a block away. I rolled the window down. Inside my living room, two people I had never seen before sat on my couch, drinking wine like it was theirs. A soft jazz track played in the background. The woman laughed at something. She was barefoot, feet tucked under her, a silk robe slipping off one shoulder. The man was feeding grapes into her hand. The couch had changed. My pillows were gone. So were the framed sketches that used to hang above the fireplace. And the piano. Gone. The space where my husband's grand piano used to sit, his pride, his soul, the last sound he ever made before disappearing, had been replaced by a potted fig tree and a sleek bookshelf stacked with fake books and scented candles. My studio had become a reading nook. My charcoal is gone. My easel is gone. I didn't realize I was crying until Therese reached over and handed me a tissue. "He sold my life," I whispered. "By the bottle." The next morning I called Daniel. I didn't bother pretending I was calm. "You lied to me," I said the moment he picked up. He sighed like I was inconveniencing him. "Mom, what now?" "I saw the house," I said. "Saw the couple, the wine, the listing, the sketch you framed. You told me this was temporary. You said you'd bring my journals." Silence, then a shrug in his voice. "It's just until the market picks up. Short-term rentals. You weren't using it. You removed your father's piano. You don't even play anymore. That's not the point," I snapped. He paused. Then his voice dropped, colder than I'd ever heard it. "You're better off in there, Mom. You've got people taking care of you. Meals, meds, all of it. And if you keep pushing like this..." He let the sentence hang. "Don't make me file for medical guardianship." I went silent, not because I didn't have words, but because I knew, for the first time, my son didn't see me as a person anymore. Just a problem, a barrier, an asset to manage. The call ended before I could decide if I wanted to scream or sob instead. I sat at the window of my tiny room in Rosehaven, hands shaking, heart numb. Outside, someone was trimming the hedges, the same way Daniel said he would declutter my life. Only now did I realize he hadn't moved me out to protect me. He'd removed me to make space. The next morning, I asked for a pen. Karen smiled, assuming I was journaling. I nodded, playing the role. Instead, I wrote a name on the back of my napkin. Juno Reyes. 15 minutes later, I convinced Therese to make the call. She didn't ask questions, just dialed and passed me the phone behind a stack of folded linens. Juno, I whispered. It's Iris. There was a pause, then a low chuckle on the other end. Damn, I was wondering when you'd need me again. We met 30 years ago on a missing persons case. She was the only one who believed me when no one else would. And I knew, if anyone could find the rot under the rug, it was her. I need you to look into Daniel, I said. Quietly. Family trouble? He's not my family right now. He's a threat. She didn't ask anything else, just said, give me 48 hours. 2 days later, we met in the park across from Rosehaven. She wore dark glasses and a Red Sox cap, like she was tailing someone even when she wasn't. She handed me a folded envelope. Brace yourself. Inside were bank statements, legal filings, screenshots, and one thing that made my stomach turn. My name. On a $480,000 business loan application. As the guarantor. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine. Almost. But I never signed this. He used me? I asked. Juno didn't flinch. He didn't just use you. He buried you under his mess and called it a safety net. That crypto startup he launched? It tanked. Took a bunch of angel investors with it. He's got liens on his car, his credit cards are maxed, and his last 2 checks bounced. He listed your house as secondary collateral for a personal loan that hasn't been cleared yet. He's scrambling. My hands were cold. All that sweet talking about your recovery, she said. That was just smoke. He needed you out of the house to make it rentable. Then he used your name to make himself look stable. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't ask why. I just sat there and watched a pair of crows fight over a crust of bread on the sidewalk, like nothing else in the world existed. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm. He thinks I'm trapped in here. Powerless. He's wrong, Juno said. Yes, I whispered. He is. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled out every intake form I had signed at Rosehaven, reread every clause, every line. I circled. The one that said residency is voluntary and may be terminated by the resident at any time. Then I made a list. 1. Transfer power of attorney back to myself. 2. Visit the county recorder's office. 3. Call Helen. 4. Retrieve the journals. 5. Prepare the house. It wasn't rage that moved me, it was clarity. Daniel didn't just betray me, he underestimated me, and that would be his last mistake. He didn't even hear us pull up. Daniel was in the backyard, lounging on a deck chair that wasn't there 6 months ago, holding a glass of something amber and expensive looking. Sunglasses, Bluetooth speaker, not a care in the world, until he saw the uniform. I stepped out first. Juno followed, crisp black blazer, hair slicked back. The notary, a young woman with a thick binder, stood beside her. And behind us, the officer. Calm, professional, just present enough to make it clear. This wasn't a suggestion. Daniel stood. Mom? He laughed. What is this? I didn't answer. I walked straight to the porch and opened the front door with my original key. It still worked. That alone made me smile. Inside, the air was heavy with someone else's perfume. The couple from before had just finished breakfast. Their dishes were still on my table. They stared at me, confused. I turned to the officer. Please escort them off the property. Their rental contract was fraudulently executed. Daniel was shouting before the second plate hit the sink. You can't do this. They paid. This is illegal. No, I said, handing the notary a set of signed documents. What's illegal is leasing a property you don't own, using a forged power of attorney, and listing your mother as guarantor on a loan she never signed. I turned to the tenants, softening my voice. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. You're not in trouble, you've just been misled. They left quickly. I would have too. Daniel followed me into the foyer, breathing heavy. You're confused, Mom. You're not well. You were in recovery. I pulled the folder from my bag and dropped it on the hall table. Medical records, I said. Full cognitive competency. I've already filed to revoke every document. You submitted on my behalf. He reached for the folder. Juno blocked his hand. I took out my phone. Pressed play. His voice cracked out, loud and clear. She's not all there anymore. Honestly, I don't think she should be making decisions for herself. It was from Rosehaven, one of their intake meetings. He hadn't known I was recording. Daniel paled. I looked him in the eye. You should have remembered. I used to sketch criminals for a living. I notice everything. He opened his mouth, closed it again. I was never your fallback plan, I said. Not your bank, not your burden, and certainly not your exit strategy. He stood there, stunned, while the locks were changed and the officer handed him a copy of the court order. All rights revoked. No access, no appeal. By sundown, he was gone. The house was mine again, but I wasn't the same woman who had left it. Not anymore. It started with the creaking panel in the study. I hadn't noticed it before, not when I lived here last, not even when I packed for Rosehaven. But something felt off. The books on the second shelf weren't in the right order. Not how I left them. And then I remembered. A rainy afternoon decades ago. My husband Thomas is standing in this very room tapping the wall and saying, "One day, if things ever get complicated, look behind the sketch of the river bend." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. He was always romanticizing danger. But now? I wasn't laughing. I reached up and carefully removed the frame. Behind it, nothing. Just plaster. But when I pressed along the left edge, something clicked, a panel shifted, and behind it, a black fireproof safe. My breath caught. The combination came to me instinctively. The date we met. I turned the dial, pulled the handle. It opened with a soft hiss, like something exhaling after years of silence. Inside, a single sealed envelope. Yellowed with time, on the front, in his handwriting, "In case I disappear." I sat on the floor, knees to my chest, and opened it with shaking fingers. The first page was a letter, a confession. Thomas hadn't vanished. He'd left. On purpose. Not because of me. Not because he didn't love me. But because someone was watching. A man named Elias Van. A financier. A fixer. A predator with powerful connections. Thomas had uncovered something in his contract work. Something that tied Elias to money laundering, weapons investments, and offshore accounts used to erase people who got in the way. And Thomas, in all his idealism, had tried to report it. They warned him once, then twice. The third time, he vanished. By choice. To protect me. Attached were documents, financial records, offshore accounts Thomas had moved in my name, insurance policies never filed, an entire identity he'd set up to make. Sure, if anything happened to him, I wouldn't be left with nothing. I kept flipping. Then I saw it. A name scribbled at the bottom of a list, Elias Van. Followed by, "Watch for him. He always finds new faces to wear." I froze. Because that name, I'd seen it, buried in the background check Juno gave me, on the investor profile of Daniel's crypto startup. Daniel's first investor, and just like that, the dots connected. My son, blind, desperate, arrogant, had unknowingly partnered with the same man who once drove my husband into the shadows. A man who destroyed everything he touched, and now he'd touched Daniel. I set the letter down, my mind spinning, heart strangely calm. I wasn't just reclaiming my home. I was standing in the ashes of a secret war I never even knew I was part of. But this time, I wasn't going to run. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't throw a party or take a final walk through the rooms. I just sold the house. Quietly. No listings, no open houses, just a direct sale to a preservation trust. Let them turn it into a gallery, a shelter, a memory. I didn't care. I packed light, 3 suitcases, a box of old sketches, and the letter from Thomas. I moved under my maiden name, Iris Greer, to a lakeside town where no one asked too many questions, and the neighbors smiled without expecting answers. The money? I used some of it to buy a small home with a porch that faces the water. The rest I split. A quarter went to women's shelters, specifically those helping older women trapped in coercive family dynamics. Another part funded a quiet little project, a blog called Gray Lines. No name. No face, just stories about betrayal, manipulation, guilt, about starting over at 60, 70, 80, about reclaiming space no one thought you were entitled to anymore. Every week, a new entry. Every month, a new message from a woman who said, that one felt like me. Daniel tried to reach me once. He got a legal notice in return. Clear, final, no access. No rights, no contact. I don't know if he ever figured out who Elias Van really was. Maybe one day he will. Maybe he won't. But that's no longer my business. I'm done being the net people fall into when they ruin their own lives. Now I sketch again. Most evenings you'll find me on the porch, charcoal in hand, bare feet on the worn wooden planks, as the lake shifts with the wind. Sometimes it's soft and still. Sometimes it roars. Kind of like me. I never thought I'd start over at this age, but I didn't just leave to escape. I left to begin.